Hello, welcome to Ilalan, the YouTube channel, and in this video I'll be discussing the new wealth tax plan of Elizabeth Warren and comparing it to Andrew Yang's value-added tax plan. So I'll be discussing the profitability of both plans, how the money generated from both plans is going to be used by these people, and how ethical these plans are, and also what the incentives are with both of these plans and whether they have bad or good incentives. So let me first get into Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax plan. So she's going to tax 2 cents for every dollar of household net worth, which is above 50 million US dollars. She's going to charge 6 cents for every dollar of household net worth above $1 billion. And she's going to, on average, generate $550 billion revenue annually. So this is estimated from basically she used to have a 3% tax for over $1 billion rather than 6%. So I've just doubled what the previous estimate was because I am assuming that pretty much all of the generated revenue is coming from the over 1 billion bracket, because the 2% tax on over 50 million going up to 1 billion is a very small percentage of what will be raised from the over 1 billion bracket. So a maximum total revenue of 550 billion annually is what her plan would have if it went to as it was supposed to. And the household net worth that she is going to assess to see how much a person should be taxed is going to include everything they have globally as assets. So any property you have in a different country, any savings, even retirement funds, everything is included here. And if you try to renounce your citizenship and just move to a different country which doesn't have this plan, then you're going to have 40 cents of tax for every dollar of net worth above 50 million US dollars. So this is quite a large incentive to not take your money elsewhere and just forced to stay in the US. So sorry about that. So her tax payment can be deferred and paid 5 years after it was supposed to be paid, but she's going to charge interest for that, but she hasn't specified how much it's going to be. Here's how her tax plan would play out in the real world. So let's say there's a married couple and they have many houses in the US and abroad, and they have retirement savings and also a business, but their total household net worth combined is only, well, not only, but $49 million, but it's not quite enough to meet the requirement of a plan, so they don't pay any wealth tax. And then we have a person who has inherited and they've got 10 billion US dollars of net worth, and obviously that's way more than 50 million, so they're going to have to pay wealth tax. On the first 950 million US dollars, they're going to pay 2%. So 2% of 950 million is obviously 19 million, and on the remaining 9 billion after reaching the 1 billion point, they're going to pay 6% tax. So 540 million, add them up, you get 559 million US dollars for this heir of a billionaire for them to pay in that particular year. So quite a large amount, I would say. So here's how much wealth a person would have if all of their wealth was in non-return investments. So let's say they just got savings or something, and they're not going to get a return on their net worth. So let's say it's just stored in a bank account and they're not getting a return on it, and their wealth just stays there. Well, if Elizabeth Warren's plan is started, and a person at the start has 10 billion of net worth, in 20 years of not having any returns on that money, their net worth would reduce down to a third of that, so 3.3 billion US dollars, which is quite a drastic change and if you think about how many people are billionaires but they're old and they're just trying to live off that money, a lot of them are going to want to move out of the US before Elizabeth Warren's plan is started on, because you can just see how much of their wealth they would just lose in taxes. Then we move on to Andrew Yang's value-added tax plan, and it's a 10% VAT, and it would raise almost $1 trillion annually. And he said that he might exempt some goods or have different VATs for some specific goods, but he's not stated exactly what these goods and services are going to be. So here's a simulation of Yang's plan. So person buys a loaf of bread for $1. If he considered bread an essential good and exempted it, then that person would still end up only paying $1 rather than $1.10 because they don't have to pay the 10% VAT. And here's another simulation of Yang's plan, but for a good which is not considered a essential good. So let's say a person hires a plumber and cost of service is $50 and they have a 10% VAT. The end consumer needs to pay that 10%. So that person, plumber, is going to charge the end consumer $55 and pay that $5 in VAT. So the end consumer is going to end up paying $5 more for that service than they would if VAT was not there. Then let's see how whether these plans have already been tried in other countries. So Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax exists in only 4 countries, while Andrew Yang's exists in almost all countries because 166 out of the 193 countries have a VAT. Plans like Andrew's have been tried and tested lots of times, so it is effective and it's known to be effective. But plans like Warren's were tried in 12 European countries, but they got repealed in 8 of them because it cost a lot to basically administer roles which would go and check a person's net worth, because a lot of administrative bureaucratic work is required to test a person's net worth. So that cost a lot, and it ended up not generating a profit for many countries, which is why it's been repealed in so many countries. So Elizabeth Warren has made some unique aspects to her plan which make them not similar to the ones which have failed in European countries. So she's obviously made that 40% citizenship renunciation tax, which means that like in other countries where they might have been able to avoid that tax by moving to another country or holding their assets in another country, in Elizabeth Warren's plan you can't do that because her tax is for all of your household income globally, and you are going to struggle to move out of the US with her plan. And so profitability on both of these plans. Warren's plan is highly bureaucratic, and she has to get administrative positions every year to test a person's household net worth, which is very costly, obviously, and it means that she's going to have way less of this 550 billion revenue actually be reinvested into the things that she wants to reinvest in, like healthcare, because a lot of this will be spent as in jobs. And Andrew Yang's plan is also going to have bureaucracy, but not as much as Warren's. So that Andrew Yang is going to have more of that $1 trillion as money to reinvest into his UBI plan or other plans. Then we have the progressiveness of the plan. So Warren's plan is obviously considered progressive because normal people don't get taxed on that plan. And then Yang's is regressive because it doesn't. Sorry about that. You don't have a sort of discrimination between rich people and poor people in Yang's plan. It's just for everyone. So the end consumer does end up. I've got a full description of how the end consumer ends up paying most of this VAT, but you can read that in your own time. But the end consumer will end up paying the majority of the value-added tax because the businesses can get a refund on their input tax. And then the incentives, direct incentives of the plan, is that rich people are not going to want to make investments because with Elizabeth Warren's plan, if they're losing so much of their investment every year, they have to have investments which have such good returns that they have to be able to, their return has to be higher than the amount of wealth they've lost in tax. So very few people are going to have high enough productive investments that they're going to be able to make a return on their investments with whilst Elizabeth Warren's plan is in place. So it's going to make rich people want to invest less, or they're only going to want to invest in very specific niches which have high returns rather than investing in other areas which they would have previously. So it's going to make for some changes to the economy, definitely. And Yang's plan obviously directly does disincentivize consumption because it's taxing it, but it's people are going to consume anyway, like food and certain things that can't be avoided consumption-wise. So, but obviously a lot of those essential things are going to be exempted from Yang's plan. So It's going to disincentivize the luxury goods that rich people consume more than it is the food and ordinary things, ordinary electronics like phones or something. And then Warren's plan is to basically transfer wealth from the rich to fund her healthcare, childcare, social security, and many other plans that she has. And basically, she's obviously not got a universal. She's got universal healthcare, but she's not got a direct fund transfer like Andrew Yang has. Andrew Yang hopes to literally transfer cash directly to people, $1,000 a month. So Andrew Yang's wealth transfer is going to be more economically productive than Elizabeth Warren's, because that money going into healthcare is not going to generate a higher demand in the economy, but Andrew Yang's putting money into people's hands is going to generate a large amount of demand. And the ethics of Warren's plan is, obviously Warren's plan does make it so rich people are going to be disenfranchised, but they're going to want to move out, and they might be financially bound, but they're going to want to move out. So this may make for less people coming into the US to get their citizenship, and less rich people coming into the US is obviously going to be pretty bad for business and economy and investment. But Andrew Yang's plan is just going to slightly increase the cost of living for everyone. But obviously, because he plans to give everyone a certain amount of extra cash every month, so the net effect may not be a negative effect. It might actually end up being a positive effect, because the cost of living may increase, but then they also have a large amount of more cash to compensate for that. But obviously, poorer people who are less likely to buy luxury goods in the first place are going to be less affected by this VAT. So it would end up hurting poor people less and end up more causing a burden on the rich people who spend a lot on luxury good consumption. So, okay, so now my opinion, I think that Warren's wealth tax is a bad idea, because it has so many negative incentives attached to it that it's going to be bad for business. It's going to be nobody is going to be able to make a return on investment, because they just have so much tax on large amounts of investment that they're going to end up making either really small investments or making them in really niche areas. So this will completely mess up businesses and mess up the economy in a way that Andrew Yang's plan won't. And another thing is, Andrew Yang's plan is not going to make people want to move out of the country, because all countries have a VAT anyways, and the VAT Andrew Yang's suggesting is still half of that of the European level, while Warren's wealth tax is almost non-existent in the world. So her plan's going to make people have many options which are better than the US, whilst Andrew Yang's plan doesn't give people a lot of options better than the US. So that's my opinion anyway. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please drop a like, drop a comment as well, because that helps with the YouTube algorithm, and share the video with your friends. Get this channel out there, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.